today's guest is Leo Zagame, kind of, I would say, the biggest Vatican insider and whistleblower that I know of. And he's been everywhere, all over the place, preaching to everyone, including the choir, anyone that'll listen, about some very bizarre things intertwined with the Vatican and aliens, interdimensional beings, and the changing of the Homo sapien into something new. Or at least that's what I gathered. But anyway, let you take it away there.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, because it's a pleasure to be on a very relaxed and more particular form of TV, which is 420 TV. No, it's
right.
Like we are chilled. This is like the 420 has to have a different vibration.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
and there's no censorship, so you don't have to watch your mouth or anything on this channel.
It's like so we are disclosing. We are starting to disclose. We've been talking about disclosure since we met in Contact in the Desert, which was a great event which took place in Indian Wells at the Renaissance Hotel. And what was your? Are you actually lighting one? Not bad, not bad.
Well, this one's just tobacco because I live in New Mexico.
Sorry for that.
No, that's all right. This is 100% tobacco. Yes. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I got a weird feel at the whole Contact in the Desert thing. It was very bizarre to me. It was very like corporate, and I noticed a lot of sick people and different things going there for answers that I'm pretty sure the speakers really don't have. I mean, no offense to the speakers, but they seem to be like a milquetoast, watered down version. It's like I don't know, kind of like Sunday School 2.0 or something. They're going into other stuff, but they won't really say anything.
That's what I said yesterday in that interview you mentioned earlier before we started.
Yeah.
That David Wilcock is a great guy for children under 10 years old of age. I mean, he could be really teaching them using cartoons, things, and the shape of his head, the way he presents himself to the crowd. It's very much for children. I mean, that's great, but I think most of us are not children, no? So I mean, we need maybe a different approach. So I don't know. I mean, we were downstairs and he was there with his bodyguards upstairs. Didn't dare to come downstairs. We want to talk about that. I mean, we can talk about a lot of things today. We're here on 420 TV, live also on Leo Lion ZAGAMI channel. So we are.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to his channel because there's great content like almost 2 or 3 times a day, it seems like now.
Yeah, well, we're trying to keep up our pace. Of course, now in a few days, I'm going to be on the road, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but we will still try. And even on the road, I will be going to Kingman, where I have a public engagement, a speaking engagement on Sunday, the 30th of June. And then from there, I'm going to go to Roswell and then Austin, Texas, where, of course, I will be at the InfoWars headquarters. So that's it.
That'd be cool
for the next few days. But of course, there is a lot going on, as we know. And so my plan was just to have a look at what Contact in the Desert was. But then I got dragged in, and I met you, but I met a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And of course, like you said, a lot of the conference, I don't share that kind of new agey thing, which I find completely ridiculous. And of course, a lot of it is actually demonic. So, I mean, they should actually be a little bit more careful with what they're playing. But there was some like-minded individuals and some people that were worthy of our attention. And I think that in the end, it was a positive experience.
Yeah, I had a positive experience. We actually went and played around in the desert. I didn't even watch any of the speakers. I kind of talked to a couple of them because I'm a real person. So, I mean, maybe that makes me sound bad, but I didn't feel like I wanted to pay for an event. But, I'll just talk to somebody in real life, and then that's a more genuine conversation anyway. So I kind of wanted to get into there's a lot of people, and I think it's more an uneducation or an ignorance or like a pop culture thing that are like really big fans of people like, Blavatsky and Crowley and these different people, and they think, you know, they kind of go, oh, they were just a regular person, you know, they like mountain climbing and they were great. But they don't seem to know about the darker things that these people were into, all the way up to today, where you got Podesta and I don't know if I say her name right, Abramovic, anyway, the spirit cooking chick. And there's a big connection from back then to now. And I heard you talking about it, about how it seems like these people have infiltrated every sect or every group or every fad in society to put their kind of satanic ideas. And they may not even really believe in Satan, but they do believe in entities, and they do try to invoke them and get power from them. And, you know, like a lot of it, I see is connected to stuff like today we have a Planned Parenthood probably in every ghetto in the United States, and they're able to keep children alive or cut them up or do different things. And I'm not even talking about the women's aspect of it, but just the fact that in an open society we have child sacrifice as a thing that they've convinced people is a human right, instead of, like, you would think your human right would be to have your descendants on the earth, but instead they've convinced people the opposite, more of a demonic, you know, you want to kill it. It's more about yourself. You need to live your life and enjoy yourself. I mean, you can't be tied down with natural things.
Yeah, it seems like everything is going reverse in society, no? Because as we know, the devil talks backwards. So everything is, it's not like we have a linear thought. We have a bunch of people who have embraced some kind of dark path, which I think they elude themselves. It's a positive path. And
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, the fact that people say, okay, Blavatsky, Crowley, just to kind of maybe
they're like superstars to some people. Like
they also view them as the precursors of left-wing excess.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that Blavatsky herself was involved in Italy, in the unification of Italy, they had to fight the Vatican to unify Italy. That meant that, of course, you had to go against the church. And so all the anti-Christian forces were coalesced. It was right that the Vatican shouldn't have had a state, because, I mean, Christianity doesn't have to be represented by a state, but by the whole world. So,
yeah.
So Blavatsky was a figure that, of course, facilitated with her form of syncretically putting together all these religions, and for the first time reevaluating Hinduism in certain elements of Hinduism that made even Gandhi say, wow, maybe I should reevaluate myself Hinduism. So she was able to really filter for the first time these religions, but she didn't filter them in a positive way always, because a lot of his of Blavatsky followers were occultists and started to experiment all kinds of things. And Blavatsky herself was not a positive person, because she was in contact with demonic forces that were feeding her with a lot of rubbish, a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies about things. And mainly she was a servant of Lucifer. And she herself admitted it by publishing Lucifer. That was her publication.
Yeah.
For a number of years, the official publication of the Theosophical Society. So
she pretty much acted like that was the angel of light, you know, like that's the good guy, that's the positive force, like you were saying before. They twisted it into a.
Sure, we're talking here about a positive force, of course not, but we're talking about a figure that for them resembled Prometheus, which means trying to go closer and closer to the sun, or trying to get yourself to become like a god, but then you end up like Icarus, burning yourself. It's very difficult nowadays in 2019 to understand really who these people were, because they were living in another time in which the almost oppressive Victorian oppression of the Victorian era And here I have my dog that seems to agree. He says yes.
It was like a really exciting alternative for people that were being oppressed by the church at the time.
No, it wasn't only the church. In Victorian England, it was actually the whole system going from Queen Victoria, who was actually herself talking German at court, in an English court, but talking German, married with a German, and embracing a sort of Teutonic, very dark form of society in which everybody had to be punished and which sex had to be done the Victorian way, which was only in a certain position, and with the woman thinking about God save the Queen and the crown kind of thing, you know. So this was Victorian England, and in that scenario, Aleister Crowley was born in 1875, in the year in which the Theosophical Society was established.
Yeah.
And then from there on, the Theosophical Society was infiltrated immediately by the Jesuits that took over the whole show with the successor of Blavatsky. But at the same time, already Blavatsky herself was often, she had thoughts that were not very clear, because herself was in some way participating to this whole demonic scenario, because she was getting this information by these entities, these secret chiefs, but we don't know how genuine they were.
Yeah.
To depict them like one looked like Jesus, for example, the image resembles Jesus, but then was he really a positive entity? So what happens with Blavatsky is that we think that she was working behind the scenes with the secret chiefs for a specific mission. Now, when you work at that level of this behind the scenes, and I have described that in my book Invisible Master, the Puppeteer's Hidden Power, yeah. I actually talk in that book specifically about this subject, because there is a level in which mankind becomes almost a spectator that can't really do much, because there is forces at work that are from beyond this world.
Yeah.
And at times our only possibility of saving our integrity or saving our ourselves is faith. So that is the moment in which we stand with the Jesus. We know that there is faith. That's why even the Theosophical Society, in some way, was forced to have a Christian approach, even if they started filtering all this Asian stuff.
And for people who don't know, what is the theosophy?
Theosophy.
Yeah, theosophy. I had to look at it again.
Theosophy that, by the way, is now split in two branches that operate, even three actually, but the main ones are the Lodging of the Theosophists in London, and the other one, the Pasadena Theosophical Society, which I actually was a member for a number of years. So I had a direct experience in the fold. And the problem was that, of course, the Theosophical Society was infiltrated by pedophiles, by people that then recruited even this young Krishnamurti at a very tender age to become this ultimate messiah that ultimately then renounced to his own role. He went on, grown up, and at one point went in front of the Theosophical Lodge near London in this nice house, typical British setup, and all these people were waiting for some great revelation of a messiah, and this guy said, sorry guys, I'm not your messiah. He broke the expectatives of the Theosophical Society. But that already makes you understand what these people have been planning for such a long time, because then the Theosophical Society evolved. And as I said, it was infiltrated by the Jesuits. It became, together with the Jesuits, an element that needed to unify all religions to then manifest the ultimate one-world religion. But before that, it founded the concept of New Age. Already from the time of Madame Blavatsky, we have this thing, New Age is the New Age, this New Age that a lot of the Theosophists thought will come into fruition from 1888, because 1888 is 3/8,
yeah.
It's the sacred number of Jesus, is said, as 666 is the sacred number of or the unholy number of the beasts. And so we have a different perspective of things. But in 1888, the Theosophical Society that was born in 1875 saw also the establishment of the Golden Dawn. It saw the establishment of the Golden Dawn with elements from the Theosophical Society that participated also to this whole thing, though they were not the only ones. But there was basically at that time wanting to mix all these religions from the East, presenting them to the West as very innocent, very appealing. But then in the end, of course, we became often enslaved by those demons that still back then and now are in charge of certain bloodlines there in those regions, because in places like India, there is families that have been dealing with this stuff for 3, 4, 5,000 years uninterruptedly. They have a relationship with these entities. So this it's
kind of the same with the royalty and all of that stuff. Like going back, like, I know you were talking about the other day about how like other organizations like Islam have been, you know, secretly kind of invading things like NASA and different stuff. And it's odd to me that when you say that, when you were talking about the Victorian era, it kind of sounds, you know, a little Islam. And then I know that the Queen is actually the great granddaughter of the Prophet Muhammad or whatever. She's supposed to be directly related to him. So I wonder, like, how do they pick? They just keep picking these families that have had contact with these entities and then breeding them more. And it kind of brings us up to nowadays. It seems like they've got technological.
Yeah, at this point, it becomes the technological show. So what are we going to do together? We all meet up, we decide, we have Hollywood, we have this, we have that, there is Silicon Valley, blah, blah, blah. We plan the whole show, and then we project it on the planet Earth. This is how the Illuminati families today are thinking, okay? Yeah. So while the common man in the street is still demanding himself, wow, is it possible that a guy is a reincarnation of, he says, or he does, but maybe these mysteries we will never know. These people instead have a science and just go forward with this scientific way of recuperating the various souls that are immortal during the course of many lifetimes.
Yeah.
And then at that point, they unleash their plan for this century, this millennium, this 10,000 years, depending then on who shows up, because it always depends on who shows up. And of course, in what moment they show up.
Yeah.
For example, we calculated, I mean, the Illuminati or the Rosicrucians, however you want to call them, calculated in a book called the Great Book of Nature, which was actually the version published by this Italian Rosicrucian called Vincenzo Soro, a great Illuminati, who said that Jesus himself had reincarnated approximately 1,000 times already, and that was in 1921.
Do you think some of these new things that they're doing, like, do you know they're about to wake up? I think it's in 2023, the first cryogenically frozen person, and it automatically makes me think of, you know, did this person die back in 1986 or whenever it was, you know, they died and then they froze them, so they're going to try to revive this person, and it makes me wonder, when they do, is it just an open, you know, capsule for anything, or is this the first guy going to come back and, you know, like Lazarus, and try to tell us to go back? He wants to go back, or, you know, like, and then getting into all this other stuff about, you were saying something about Zecharia Sitchin, and, you know, he put out a bunch of information that kind of started, in my opinion, like with him and von Däniken, they started the ancient astronauts theory, as opposed to like the traditional demons and angels or fallen ones or any of that. But they took everybody down that course, and then it brings you full circle back to like Podesta and them acting like they're all excited about aliens and disclosure. And these are the same weirdos that, you know, are sending emails about hot dogs and pizza to each other.
Well, I'm sure that these people, well, I don't want to go further with the hot dog thing because otherwise I will become a little bit too hardcore for this time of the day. So
No, they cut me off before for that kind of talk.
uh, but when it comes to these people, you have to understand that some of them don't have access to the immortality elixir of being able to reincarnate at will.
So like they're soulless. They're kind of like soulless.
They are considered by the elite some just puppets that they use at the moment. If they eventually acquire more power and more knowledge, they might be able to at that point arrive to a level in which their bloodline will have maybe contact. That's different. The moment the bloodline has contact with the entities, then it assumes a whole different importance, the bloodline.
You think that's why all these countries are popping out with like Russia has now added to their hand in that they want to now gene edit babies as well because China did it. And China kind of seemed like they just did it to see what the world would say. Yeah, so now they're letting AI print inside of a computer, design a DNA, and then they can use CRISPR tools and different things to build it exactly that way or start from scratch 3D printing it and then make an embryo from scratch. Like they have the design already.
Let's say that is a very kind of demonic commercial thing that in the end will end up with the people that will be more than soulless. They will have some serious problems. But when it comes down instead to what I was telling you before, the Illuminati and the way of the incarnation is the way that is being used by the lamas of Tibet and is being used. It's simply in the Western tradition is being kept secret because the church didn't want absolutely this kind of secret to have, to pollute even the idea of Jesus or of anything that was related to the religion. So that's why. But if we go back to the study of early Christianity, we find that actually they believed in reincarnation. So you see, it was because of the reforms that were acted when Christianity became a state religion from 325 to 385 after Christ. There was this revolution of the empire. But still people believed in reincarnation up to, I think, the 5th century after Christ in the Christian church. It was pretty common. So you have though a moment in which this reincarnation subject was deemed very uncomfortable and not to be discussed. It's not like the lamas of Tibet, they made a big thing out of it and we all know about it, because but then we have a guy like the Dalai Lama, for example, that says that he's renouncing to the next reincarnation, that is or giving up everything now, that he's basically going to destroy the successive lines of transmission that transmitted from the 13th to the 14th Dalai Lama, and so he will be the last one. This is really very bad.
So he's saying he wants to cut off his connection with whatever divine entity they believe is the reincarnated Dalai Lama.
Yeah, and this is
at the same time as we got this Jesuit Pope, like it's all everybody's having these new ideas, the New Age.
Yeah, everybody's having this New Age idea, and when it comes to New Age ideas, we go back to talk about the Theosophical Society and how important it was to actually explain to the West this idea of these hidden masters of Shambhala in some kind of remote area of the Himalayan mountains that have some kind of power, and there was some kind of entities also living there. And that's when, of course, then these beliefs become also part of the belief system of the Nazis, because the Nazis were completely linked to the Theosophical Society through the Thule Gesellschaft, this secret society founded by
they're basically the ones that broke out all of this information from these entities and, like totally changed what we do about.
But not the only ones.
No. No, I mean just like recently that massively changed our world, like in World War II.
I tell you what happened. I mean, Brill society functioned until 1945. The moment in which Nazism ends, then all the Nazis end up working for the OSS that became the CIA, for the American military intelligence, and so on. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we people like Orsic, who apparently ended up living in New York and marrying to a guy of Italian origins called Rafa, who was in the banking world, out of all things. But then other people were brought here into the US from Germany, certain cults and certain secret societies that were
Yeah.
also connected to these entities and to the sacrifice, also human sacrifice, child sacrifice, and so on. So, but definitely we are, with the Nazis, they picked up on this thing that Madame Blavatsky also was talking about, the Aryan, this whole concept.
Yeah.
So the damage was done. The damage was done on various levels. And it wasn't just a small damage, but then it gave birth to this new age. You have to understand, all the theosophies, all the Illuminati met in 1920 in Switzerland.
Yeah.
On a mountain called Mount Verità, which means the mountain of truth. Now, on this mountain, there were some very illustrious characters that were hanging out there. I can mention a couple, but there was Carl Gustav Jung, for example, who we all know after Freud is one of the most important figures of psychiatry, psychoanalysis, whatever you want to call it.
He's the one that mind effed and everybody.
There was also many other people. There was Theodor Reuss, who had just initiated that, had accepted Aleister Crowley 10 years prior to that in the OTO.
Yeah.
And Crowley was trying to convince all the New Age movement to accept Telim. So the big confrontation with Aleister Crowley started in 1920. Started when because people nowadays, when we talk about the OTO or the Ordo Templi Orientis, their only idea of the OTO is Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
They forget that the OTO pre-existed Crowley. It was like saying, Crowley, okay, is the founder of the Illuminati. No.
Yeah, right.
He arrived a long time after the death of Adam Weishaupt and the invention or the foundation of this order of the Illuminati. But it's true that the Ordo Templi Orientis was connected to the Illuminati of a guy called Leopold Engel, who, with Theodor Reuss, picked up on this order that was founded by a wealthy guy in Austria who was into all kinds of weird stuff, but he wanted to finance the research into sexual magic. And so he was. Then the Ordo Templi Orientis became, though, a recipient for a series of branches of various secret societies that kind of had various loose affiliations, but wanted a more coercive body that initiated to get. So you're not, when you're getting initiated in some of these secret societies, they are actually umbrella organizations for other secret societies.
Yeah, it's just like a giant pyramid.
Yeah,
never can get to the top.
It's very confusing for the people that that study this, of course. But for the people who don't even study it, it's almost impossible to understand where it starts and where it ends, because it's like very, very complex.
Yeah.
Use of figures, lodges, chapters, whatever, lineages, Rosicrucian, Gnostic.
They infiltrate each other as well, too, right?
They also infiltrate each other when they're clever and when they're particularly powerful. But in the end, they end up all working for the same people, because the Jesuits, if you don't work for them, they kill you. So, I mean, it's like, it's like in the last 500 years, secret societies have had a sort of unidirectional line because they can't be a rebellion against the Jesuits.
Well, I could see that, and I saw that in real life with my own eyes. Kind of like Bilderberg. The first time I went to Bilderberg, everybody on the radio and the TV channels were saying that's not even real. There's just like 5 nuts out there, you know, outside of a hotel screaming. I get there, there's thousands of people outside, and then we start seeing all these important people come in. So I'm like, well, this is obviously real. And I lived on Andrews Air Force Base for a while, so I saw a lot of convoys of political people that were using the Air Force to land in and, you know, do all of the dignitary things. So I'd see people from China and Russia, and I would see like the Clintons in their little Gulf Stream, but never did I see the amount of security that I saw when the Pope came to the Washington. They shut down the base. They locked people in their homes on the base, and then outside of that, they shut down a giant swath of Washington. So no other dignitary, including our president or any other person, has ever got that kind of treatment that I've seen.
Well, I mean, you're not talking about the head of a state which lasts maybe a number of years. I mean, before we had this sudden change in tradition with Pope Ratzinger, the Pope was there from the beginning to the end of his life, and is considered by millions of Catholics around the world like a divine and holy figure.
Yeah.
They address him, even the heads of state address them as Your Holiness. You know, it's not like just it's like the Dalai Lama, Your Holiness. So,
right,
is this holiness then reflected in their actions or in their being? Well, very rarely, almost never. They have to compromise so much in order to keep this position of terrestrial power these days more than spiritual, that I mean, the spirituality goes out the window, I think, at a very early age with all the compromise they have to do. Of course, they probably try with certain spiritual practices, both the Pope or the Dalai Lama, to cleanse themselves of their demons. Now, in the Tibetan tradition, there is a very particular situation, because you have Bonpa, the shamanic religion that predates the ordinary Buddhist religion that you have there, not ordinary, the two schools, the red caps and the yellow caps that teach the Tibetan Buddhism, arrived after a religion that, of course, was based on these ancient demons. Like we said, you know, I call them ancient demons, and that's what they are, and they are terrifying in their aspect.
Are these like the same things that the Sumerians were calling the Anunnaki? You know, like the same type of stories? Because I know that there's all these similar tales in there.
It's similar in every single.
You know, like you got the Cain and Abel story, you got the Adam and Eve story to an extent, and then there's the flood and all of these things.
Yeah, apart from those Abrahamic elements, but you have also the pagan elements. For example, the end of Atlantis.
Yeah,
not considered by Christianity, but beware, it was actually considered very important by Athanasius Kircher, who is one of the main Jesuits, considered one of the driving forces of Jesuit philosophy, Athanasius Kircher, and who was the guy who, even before the Star of Rosetta, the Rosetta Stone was gave the possibility of the translated, actually gave his own interpretation, and it was at times quite accurate. So I will say that when it comes to the Jesuits, they have monopolized everything, and that with theosophy, they have found a way through theosophy, and those branches of Freemasonry that follow theosophy, or those people who have also, like Aleister Crowley, brought to a new level, because then Aleister Crowley wanted the whole New Age movement to embrace his own demonic revelation. So that was pure Satanism. So we see here in 1909, we see a situation with Crowley trying to opening the gates of hell initially. Then he will arrive to the United States, and he will further open the gates of hell. And then at one point, you see, those entities will start coming through, because the rituals were made so they could come in.
So even though he may not have even known about the effect, that doesn't mean it wasn't going to still happen later. It's open.
No. He knew. It's actually, if you study Crowley, he knew exactly what he was doing.
No, I didn't mean that. I mean, know that he had success. I knew he knew what he wanted to do.
You see, it doesn't work that way. Success and success. He was completely possessed. So
Yeah.
there was no success in possession. There was him
No
obeying
success.
the orders of the demon who resided in his body all his life and probably screwed up a lot of his life because he lived at the end of his life as a heroin addict and he was really in a bad place. So the people who say, oh, Crowley, never mind Crowley. No, Crowley is a guy who preached values that, of course, if followed in the way Crowley wanted, they would be like, well, not they would be like, they are like almost like California today in 2019.
I
But
was I was about to say that if Crowley sat there and he, wanted to look at the world he wanted to create, if you dropped him off in 2019 in like San Francisco or LA or any place, New York, he would that would be wonderful. I mean, his whole concept of do as thy will is just everywhere.
yeah, yeah. That is the thing, you see, and that Crowley actually managed to plant those seeds of evil here in California. He lived the last few years of his life in a place on the English Riviera, but the only people who actually sent him money to live were the people from the lodge here in California. And,
Wow.
and so his first Gnostic Mass was done here in near Hollywood Boulevard, not far from Hollywood Boulevard. And we can say that really without California, there will not have been Crowley as we know it today, as we know him today, as this iconic revolutionary figure of counterculture, which in reality is somebody who is working to actively destroy it and foment a great change that is clearly demonic because he himself wasn't hiding it. He was pretty blatant about it and pretty open about what he was doing.
Well, I notice things, and it's like, I rarely watch TV, but whenever I do watch TV, I look at the choices I have nowadays. It's quite different than when I was a kid. Like I turn on Netflix and you got Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, and it used to be all cute and whatever, and now now it's they're worshiping the satanic church and they want her to sign her name over to Satan. And then you have Lucifer is like one of the number one TV shows that people are watching. And then you go on and on and on. And then like every show, like you could, there's a show called Supernatural, and the king of hell is named Crowley, or like a recent British one that the demon that they put in the show, his name, well, first it was Crawley because he crawled like a snake, but then he's Crowley later.
Today, our listeners, our viewers, whoever is following us, wants to really know who these people are and what is happening. Okay, so my idea for today's show, to make it really special for you, for me, for everybody that's following,
all right,
was to unveil something that people don't know about this coming of the Antichrist, about Crowley, about Telema, about his philosophy. So I have here a booklet, which is a very, very rare booklet of Crowley, Aleister Crowley. You can see it. It's not one of those books that you find very easy because it's always printed in very limited edition, but since the time of Crowley, is known as the Heart of the Master. As you can notice here, there is
7 sevens.
A symbol. See?
Yeah.
See? Putting it also for my viewers, so I have two cameras.
And I noticed right away the 7 sevens right there.
Okay, so 777, which is the number, we said 888, the number of Jesus, 777, the number of Babylon. The number of Babylon represents, of course, something that the Christians relate very much to because of the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
And then we have, see, when you open the book, the first thing you see is the seal of the OTO with the signing of Crowley that signed himself as Baphomet.
Wow.
Okay.
And Baphomet's kind of like, for people that don't know, they've picked up the Baphomet symbol as the satanic symbols, and you can see that at
is the cross that, of course, is used also in the ancient Antiseptic Scottish Rite and relates to the Templars. And then in this specific booklet of Crowley, we have, though, a much more frightening and scary symbol, which I will show you now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this symbol was the seal of 666, in the sense that he was, of course, producing something demonic. Okay. Now, why they said, I said before, this is unusual for people that they don't know certain things, because now I want to reveal for the people who maybe, you know, they don't know about these things and about Crowley. Crowley is very well known in connection with the Ordo Templi Orientis, but little is known about his connection with this other group, which is the one publicized on the front of this particular book. But also in all his books, there is always the imprimatur of the AA here.
Yeah.
The imprimatur of the AA. And this imprimatur changes for each book, changes here, because, of course, the imprimatur is given in a specific way for each channeling operation, which is basically not a normal book, but a channeling from a demonic source from Sirius.
From Sirius.
Yeah, so this is not terrestrial in nature, okay? So
he was for that. So that book describes how to channel an entity from Spirit. No,
we are much more advanced than that.
Okay.
Much more
possessed
advanced.
by it.
No, he already, this kind of book here,
yeah,
implies that you already know that.
Yeah,
and that this is simply an instruction given by them for the satanic followers of Aleister Crowley. And
I got you. So this is a direct message from the entity.
Okay. So that's why I said it changes there, because here, of course, this was published then for the first time on the 23rd of September in 1938 in London.
Wow.
This book here is particular because Crowley was trying to describe his vision, of this specific figure that will come after him. So, and in the meantime, this book reveals that there is a number of other important messengers involved. And here I'm going to show you the names so you can recognize some of them.
Wow. Guatemala, huh?
Watch. So the names, like, for example, we have Lao Tse, Gautama, Zerdus, Pythagoras, Dionys, Osiris. So we have a situation that is particular, because he's saying that there was a brotherhood that has been utterly destroyed by a great sorcery of the Black Lodge and the darkening of all counsel and the confusion of all truth. So Crowley called the Black Lodge the Vatican. And we are now in 2019 in a moment in which when people like me start talking about disclosure, immediately they receive people from the OTO with threats, things, and people that just they don't get it. But these people, they don't want the disclosure, because for them it means the disclosure of their demonic nature, of their workings, their dirty secrets. And they don't want that, because, you know, in society, they like to be accepted as proper members of society, and they like to have their rights.
Yeah, they like to hide in the occult. They don't want to be in the light.
Yeah, and unfortunately here in California, because Crowley planted his base here in California, they in 1977 they founded the Grand Lodge of Berkeley of the OTO, and at that point, of course, Crowley had already bestowed in the 40s the title of Caliph to McMurtry, who was Crowley's adept in the U.S. military intelligence, that then became the first caliph, the first supreme Grand Master of this new OTO after Crowley, that could only be built up once they killed Crowley's legitimate successor to the OTO, because Crowley himself couldn't really act as he wanted. He wanted to act with his own will, and he wanted to do what they willed. The problem was that he was also a member of the Illuminati, and the Illuminati said, this order is German, and your successor has to be German. So that guy had to be, he was living in the US, and that guy had to be, of course, eliminated in some way, and all his magical properties stolen, as well as the publications of Crowley that he had that were very important for the future of the establishment of the OTO in the United States. And it was Charles Manson that operated with his own group, this
I was about to ask if the military and intelligence connection came out in Charles Manson and their little group.
Well, Charles Manson was a member of the Solar Lodge of the OTO, something that the OTO still tries to hide to this day. In fact, it was actually
put it in videos before.
Eh?
I put it in videos before because I've had arguments about whether or not he was associated actually with them.
No, he was, and he was actually admitted by a very high-ranking member of the OTO, which then became the wife of the first caliph, like McMurtry. I was talking, Grady McMurtry, which was the guy who used to be a disciple of Crowley. And so you see, the problem here is that the OTO doesn't want to have any connection to Manson. So at the beginning of the 70s, when there was a book published called The Family by Ed Sanders, I think was the author, that actually mentioned this, they actually made this book go out of circulation. And they had to, and this book was censored in the later editions, because the connection with Charles Manson and the Solar Lodge of the OTO was a connection which was very, very disturbing for the future of the OTO. In 1977, the OTO aimed to construct a new Grand Lodge in Berkeley University. So they didn't want to have anything to do with the guy who a few years before was on every newspaper in the world as the biggest murderer, whatever.
He's a superstar, man. People love him.
Yeah, but the OTO didn't want to have that kind of link, because people already hate the fact that these people are Satanists. And then they start to get these links. Of course, the OTO is linked with more mass murderers and with more killers and assassins that the public has to know.
Yeah.
They have been hiding. It's like the Son of Sam. They have been hiding any connection because they don't want to ruin
that was also 77 as well, right?
Well, of course, it was.
I did a video on the Son of Sam too, because I was born in 77. So, and the whole weird thing around that, the power outage, the you know, and it's weird that it was downtown, and they love that area of New York. And I'm pretty sure that, in my opinion, 9/11 was just a big blood sacrifice for the whole world you couldn't hide from it. So you had to watch it. You had to participate in it. So you had no choice. And then we even made the whole world participate in it.
Well, I mean, New York is one of the satanic capitals. I mean, that building where John Lennon used to live, and where Roman Polanski, with his famous Rosemary's Baby, it's a building that has some very real occult connections that go directly to Aleister Crowley and to all the Satanists in the US that welcomed Crowley when he arrived here. Because when Crowley used to arrive from one side to the other of the world, he used to travel a lot, like most people that are in certain groups, like certain specific groups in the Illuminati. And of course, Crowley was connected with the Satanists that will invite them to their own, their own secret party or their own secret human sacrifice, black mass, whatever.
Yeah.
And there was also a link with that specific building in which Crowley himself participated apparently to sex magic in that building, indulged in drugs, and pushed the opening of the future portal for the disclosure of this entity that he called Lamb, which of course then is part of what is known as the Alamantra workings.
And so, it just happens to look like a gray alien too. On top of
look like a gray alien. Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of course, I mean, people nowadays, the OTO especially likes to hide certain elements of their tradition, the darkest elements of their tradition, because they're trying to make money in the meantime by selling Aleister Crowley's books, because they now own the copyright after a very long legal battle that went on from the 90s, all the 90s until the end of the 90s, in which in the end they managed to win all these court cases. And and some of them were actually court cases that the American OTO made, even against Crowley's legitimate literary successors that were actually appointed by Crowley. But they didn't care about that. They cared about truly controlling Crowley's copyright. What does this mean? It means that this is the first religion that, on the contrary of the Bible or the Quran, whatever other religion there is on this planet, it is a religion that wants extreme control over every single thing that is printed out, because it becomes at that point a business, and it becomes also a way of controlling the power of those words in certain environments.
Logos.
The logos, the power of the logos, because in the Book of the Law, which is Crowley's central book, of central channeling book, that book was actually not channeled by him, was channeled by his wife. So you see, most of his books were channeled by himself. Yeah. But with that specific book, it was his wife who got possessed in the Great Pyramid and started to channel for 3 days in a row, every day, this Book of the Law, which destroys every other religion and creates this new faith for the New Age, which is based on terrible things,
if I'm not mistaken, I think I read that they had to cover the world in blood for the Age of Horus, so that everybody could be all nice and do as they will, and it'll be great, and everybody will be happy. That's nuts.
Well, we see.
Sounds like hell on earth. I mean, it sounds literally like it.
The thing is that in the end of okay, we think nowadays we have a naive idea of the 60s and of this age of Aquarius and of this flower power that went on here up the road, both in Los Angeles, but especially in San Francisco. Okay, everybody has
Berkeley.
And of course, and we know that one of the few lodges in the world that was left before the Berkeley Grand Lodge took off in 1977 was a group in the early 60s, late 50s in Berkeley, in which Anton LaVey also was present, Kenneth Anger. They say that even Roman Polanski, that after became a co-founder of the Church of Satan, by the way.
Well, that makes sense.
And all these people gathered and were celebrating, of course, black masses and so on. But it wasn't only about that. It was about a dark side of the age of Aquarius. While everybody was thinking there was this great, and I mean, it was positive because you were breaking with all the old, almost, it was like another breaking of making society more loose so they could plant all these negative demonic values. But first they had to make it loose. So it's a bit like the OTO in the Victorian times, and then you have the OTO in the EP movement, and it's the Solar Temple was the representatives here in LA instead. So they had two lodges that were actually active in California, and in these two cities things started to manifest. But there was also a dark side that people don't know about, and that dark side you can find in certain movies, in certain books, but they are scattered because nobody wants to really discuss the dark side of the age of Aquarius.
No.
Nobody wants to say, oh, no, it's very nice, Altam, the Rolling Stones, yeah, what okay, there was one guy who was killed or whatever. Then there was Woodstock, great, everybody was on acid, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that all these events were events for experimenting.
Yeah.
And the people on top use those secret societies to spread certain things, including the drugs, even at certain levels.
Yeah, all the LSD and all of that.
So you have, personally, now I am in 2019 in California, which is very different from how it was back then. Yeah. But back then, definitely there was, it wasn't like people think now, all flower power. And the moment in which they decided to end abruptly the age of Aquarius because they were starting to get it. There were certain people in the flower power hippie movement that were starting to get it. It was like, you know.
Is that why that the same groups, like in all of these universities and stuff that first started putting out these ideas, and then they're always socialists. They always go with the socialist idea or the communist idea. But on top of that, is that the reason that now those are the centers of clamping down ideas? The same people of the same age range that were those hippie flower power people are now professors telling people you can't say anything.
But these are the same hypocrites that will tell you maybe, oh, it's very bad to do this because, and then they have done, basically they have probably took LSD with Timothy Leary.
Yeah, it reminds me of that drug commercial they used to give us as children, you know, where the kid would go yell at the parents and go, I learned it by watching you. You know, it's literally that. And now they're trying to tell you where and when and how and when you're going to do it and what format. It's like those little spells or whatever.
But it also works in this way, you see. These people who are telling us now what to do and what not to do, people like the Clintons, people like, they worked for many, many years within the CIA democratic left-wing side of things. The same side of things that we see endorsed by George Clooney in the movie Staring at Goats. The same side of things that was Colonel Alexander, and then his friend Michael Aquino, and then their friends, the Jesuits, and then the film The Exorcist. It was all part of a big, big current, which is the same people that follow, basically have molded our society. And you see, for them it was like, it's very cool. Let's take an acid and then we can manipulate and control the whole world made of idiots because they can do anything to us because we are gods. We have become gods. This is what their mind told them because Crowley had this motto, Deus est homo, which was the motto of the high degrees of the OTO. So people really start to believe in, wow, we find. And the problem was at the end of the 60s, before the Charles Manson, like Charles Manson got unleashed, like, let's unleash this to destroy the positive side of the flower power because they are getting it. And maybe if they start getting it, it's not good because they will start sitting here and making thoughts with their heads, and those thoughts will gather in an egregore, and maybe they go around the Pentagon, they start all together thinking about one thing, and maybe initially it can be a joke, but then it can be a very serious thing if you focus this.
Yeah, it could have turned into something positive that they weren't controlling, so they had to destroy it.
They had to destroy. So let's unleash like they say, let's unleash the dogs of war. But in that case, they have unleashed the assassins, which Charles Manson himself wasn't even. He was the one who had to control them. He was the mind controller of this sect.
Yeah.
So the fact that in this sect there was
he didn't actually kill anyone, did he? He only talked people into it.
No, but that's the thing. That shows you mind control
Yeah.
The power of mind control. And the fact that in his own cult, their sect, there was Bobby Besoleil, who was himself an actor with the part of Lucifer in Invocation of My Demon Brother of Kenneth Anger, basically, and that this year, the Democrats in California want to give parole to Bobby Besoleil, because now that Charles Manson is dead, let's free Lucifer. This guy.
I don't. It's hard for me to not understand why the general public doesn't. They don't recognize things like, okay, so you want a politician, let's find out who their heroes are. You know what I mean? Like, so take Clinton per se. She loves Margaret Sanger. She loved General, what's his name, Senator Byrd. And then you think about who are these people that they admire so much. One's the super progressive that came up with Planned Parenthood, and she was really involved in the KKK. And then you got the other guy, Byrd. He was literally a grand wizard or grand dragon or whatever you call it of the KKK. And then they're the party that represents different people and minorities, and at the same time as they're hooked up with these people that are the cause of all of the problems that they're debating.
Yeah, and when we're mentioning Bobby Besoleil, and he made the soundtrack to the movie Lucifer Rising that was used after by Lady Gaga in a documentary for Netflix.
Yeah.
Joel Osteen, how you call him? Who is the famous televangelist.
Oh, yeah. What's his name? I'm bad with names, but I know who you're talking. Osteen or whatever.
Joel Osteen. He went and celebrated the LGBTQ Pride, which I don't have anything against, but he went to celebrate it at the Luciferian event of Lady Gaga, who is a Luciferian, but she's not just a Luciferian because somebody wrote a conspiracy on the internet. No, because she put the music of Bobby Besoleil, murderer Bobby Besoleil, a killer of the Charles Manson, who was Lucifer in the film Invocation of My Demon Brother, and made the music for Lucifer Rising in prison. She used the music made by this guy in prison for her own documentary. And the Democrats are saying that because his music is now on a Netflix video, he has to be put on parole.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And at the same time, we have Joel Osteen, who claims he's this great man of God, you want
me to tell you something about Joel Osteen? Like that just kind of shows what kind of person he is. So he's got this big old church, right? And the hurricane blows in and he locks it up because of flooding. But the parking lot's got like this much water in it. And it's funny because people are like, they're going to FEMA, they're going to all these places, everything's flooding. In his nice church, he said he would open it up and then he closes it.
Remember that. And I tell you one thing, my first experience with Joel Osteen was a few years back when I came to the United States. I put on the TV on a Sunday morning, and suddenly I see this guy, and I'm like, is this guy for real?
He is. It's real.
I was like, geez, man. I mean, the Americans, this is a spiritual desert. Get a grip, man. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, Joel Osteen really seemed to me like the epitome of fakeness. And
it's so obvious. It's like people, I mean, no offense to you guys that like to watch WWE wrestling, but it's like the same thing. It's, I don't know how people don't know that that's a role or a part for money.
It was a little bit shocking for me, but it was also very entertaining. But then, of course, if he has to be a Christian minister, at least make him portray the Christian values. He goes and endorses Lady Gaga, who herself is really a Satanist. So, I mean, at that point, really, you're not a man of God anymore, and you need to be exorcised, Joel.
Right. So, speaking of exorcism and weird connections of modern day stuff, every time I tell someone that the Vatican has a serpent head room where the Pope sits in it between fangs down a long red thing where the people that watch are sitting in literally the mouth of the serpent, they never believe me. And then I have to show them pictures. So I don't know the history behind the art piece that's behind him. But to me, like when I look at it, it looks like someone's depicting hell being released and there's a whole reptilian Jesus and it's all, I don't understand how anyone could go to that place and think, I'm at a Christian church. This is about Christ. I'm sitting literally in the serpent's mouth. Is that just supposed to be positive symbolism, or is that actually what's going on there? Is that what it's about, at least for this pulp in that room?
No, it is connected actually to an ancient heretical group of Gnostics called the Ophiti. People immediately start talking about the reptilians, and of course we know that there is these bloodlines who are linked with these entities, and so of course they accuse them of being reptilians. And personally myself, I never have shape shifted. I mean, some people that once I shape shifted during an interview. I don't know.
We love reptilian shapeshifters around here. No.
Well, I mean, I actually can believe that they exist. Because I saw a couple of times things that happened around me, of people shape-shifting in some ways that were a bit particular, but they were not necessarily reptilians. But in any case,
it's like a representation, though, that something's out of phase with those people.
Well, of course, something is out of phase because you are connected with the entities in a way that the normal people are not. I mean, it's like the Cubans. The Cubans, when they go, you open their drawers or you open their cupboards, and suddenly you find yourself a little creature like this, and they start spitting cigar smoke or alcohol on it because this is an entity they have to keep alive every day, and so they have to feed him.
I didn't know that.
That is part of Santeria. It's a typical Santeria thing that the Cubans are connected to, and a lot of people here in mainland USA they are linked to that because we have a very big Cuban community. Then within the Cuban community, there is Satanists, and they are usually called Babalaos because I will not say that all Babalaos are necessarily all Satanists, but sincerely, when you are a Babalao, it's pretty sure that you are to say why, because the Babalao is the one who is in charge of killing the animal.
Yeah.
And so they are of course connected to these entities. In the moment in which you are connected and feeding these entities, you're automatically lost. Your spirit is lost, your soul is lost, your being is lost. The Muslims themselves feed the entities. They give them the interiors of sheep. They give them the outside of onions. There is a whole diet of the demonic.
Right.
So that is not very well discussed, but of course today in this 420, because we are live on 420 channel.
Oh, it's 420. We've been on here for an hour. All right.
We've been here for an hour. And we've been discussing very interesting stuff. I will plug in for a second my book here, volume 6.66.
You could plug all of your books if you want.
All my books. There is also the new edition, which I'm going to present this week, and actually volume 1.
Wow.
To present this new edition, which is very interesting because it has a whole new chapter, which is dedicated also to Atlantis, which and the connection of Atlantis with what we have been talking today. But there's a whole new chapter with a lot of interesting information. So I've been working a lot on these books, as you know, for many years. So now I come here to the US, and I hope, of course, you know, I didn't come here because I just want to have a holiday. I had to leave, and so now I'm here in the US, and I hope that things will turn out okay. I'm trying to do my best to spread what I know, because people say, but how comes now you are like 2 or 3 times a day? We can see you, that you're much more present than before. Well, guys, if I started to say these kind of things where I was living, I will not last 2 days, because the guys there who were persecuting me, they were not joking, and they were making my life hell. And when you get arrested, tortured, and whatever, it's not very easy to then go and speak happily in front of a camera about the mystery of the universe or anything, because you are not in state of mind. So when you are a man always persecuted, you don't have that state of mind. Now I can say that here in America at the moment, I'm pretty relaxed, having a good time, and people seem to appreciate my work. And finally, I can get my books to get the right attention from the public.
So did you find that a lot of Americans know who you are when you got here, like all over the place?
Well,
I wasn't expecting to see you. You just kind of like walked out, and I was like, wow, hey, how's it going?
Well, aside from maybe, places like Continent in the Desert, where of course you have a lot of people who knew me, and occasionally I meet also members, like-minded people, and members of various groups of Info Warriors, Proud Boys, 3%, whatever. A lot of people that we have here in the US that seem to follow my work, and I'm glad that there is a positive response. Of course, there has been also people that are harassing me, people want to murder me, but who gives a fuck? I mean, these assholes message.
Well, now you're in the US, so look into the Second Amendment.
Yeah, well, no, it's not a problem, man. I mean,
No, I know. I'm just teasing. And I don't want to freak everybody out. So I want to thank Leo Lion. God, I always do that. ZAGAMI for coming on and hanging out with us on 420. And I want to tell everybody, hey, I also heard him saying some positive stuff that you don't have to, keep it all doom and gloom, that there are positive entities out there, positive people out there. And, there's a whole positive other aspect we weren't talking about this time, but I hope to get you on again and maybe we could talk about some of the positive sides of some of these ideas.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And next time we will maybe change into that direction. I think it's very important, though, that if they want to operate some kind of disclosure, we warn the people that, guys, it's not just some kind of disclosure of benevolent forces. What they are about to disclose is very malevolent, very demonic in nature. You have some good forces, of course, out there, but the majority of people in this day and age don't attract benevolent forces with their wrongdoing every day. They attract malevolent forces.
That's not what the Matrix is putting out for us to think about. So it's they want to keep us occupied with fake reality, so people only have one decision and one path to go down towards these things, to these negative things like this TV. I just feel like that's all it is nowadays, is it keeps you occupied with fake scenarios, with fake people, and then they got it so technologically advanced that you get emotionally involved with fake people. And then by the time the day's over, you've spent all of your natural emotions, endorphins, hormones on fakeness. And then when you see real people, you're kind of like, get away from me, and they're annoying. You've already spent your emotional energy all day on fakeness.
They make you discharge your emotional content, so then you can just be a zombie going around, emotionless zombies. That seems to be increasing this kind of situation, especially when
it's not complete without this, though.
Yeah, without the phone, like I was about to say, with that thing in front of them. And then
you were one of I was doing a little experiment at Contact in the Desert. I was looking around to see how many people, when I see awake people, usually those people aren't constantly on their phone. They're in their head, but they're not always, unless they have to contact someone. And then you look around, and I noticed that there were very few people that didn't have their phone attached to their face. Even the hippies and all of them, they still had it right there, ready.
I didn't. I like to enjoy myself when I'm in a social situation. I find it very, very rude. I hate it myself, really, and I know that it's essential these days also at times to keep connection. So I've limited myself in Content in the Desert to a few minutes in the lobby where we are just filming the Chinese Frank Sinatra and having fun with a few of our UFO friends, ufologists, however you want to call them, and so that was pleasant. We just broadcast on Facebook a couple of minutes, but aside from that, I mean, I really put my phone away. Don't even like to have it on me, because aside from everything, it has radiations that damage you guys. So I mean,
not only that, it's like you carry your little entity around with you now. I mean, it's a droid. They call it a droid for a reason. And then, that's all crazy stuff. But anyway, I've taken up enough of your time. And I want to appreciate you for coming on 420 TV. And
420, so we are about to 420 ourselves. Bye bye, everybody.